evolution, demographic trends, and climate change. There's no clearly defined turning point in these most significant policy areas. Governments adapt or fail to do so over a long period of time. In all three, it's hard to make the case that British governments have risen to the titanic demands or address the possibilities that arise from these three big themes. Even so, there is and will continue to be constant change, some of it veering towards the apocalyptic, arising from the climate crisis, growing elderly populations in advanced countries, and the potential of technology. In these areas, no single year or event will mark a turning point. The 10 turning points I explore in this book can be dated precisely. They take three different forms. There are general elections, the ones held in 1945, 1979, and 1997. The first two brought about historic and enduring change, especially the 1979 election. The 1997 election led to a less vivid transformation of the country. I recall sitting next to the BBC's Evan Davis at the launch of Labour's 1997 manifesto. He observed to me that Tony Blair's message was essentially, everything in this old castle is broken, we plan to change the ashtrays. Nonetheless, in some important respects, the new Labour era also marked a break with the immediate past. At the very least, there was a change in the governing party after 18 years of Conservative rule. There are also three turning points relating to foreign affairs, all of which triggered urgent questions about the UK's place in the world. The Suez Crisis in 1956, the war in Iraq in 2003, and the Brexit referendum in 2016. All three were also intense domestic sagas. The questions were far from answered at the time, or arguably since. Two global crises are explored in a single chapter, the 2008 financial crash and the global pandemic that spread like wildfire in 2020. Both brought about a revived dependency on the state after a long period in which government activity was viewed with suspicious wariness, at least after Margaret Thatcher had cast her spell. In the first, the banks and those that used them pleaded for the British government to intervene financially on a mind-boggling scale. This was nothing compared with the costs of supporting virtually every business during the pandemic, an emergency that also highlighted the value and fragilities of the NHS and the lightly regulated, underfunded social care sector. An external force was also a factor in another turning point, one that tormented three prime ministers in the 1970s. In different ways, Edward Heath, Harold Wilson and James Callaghan left office after struggling to adapt to the daunting consequences of a sudden quadrupling of oil prices in 1973. The costs of imported energy soared as miners in the UK were becoming more muscular, and Margaret Thatcher hovered in the wings. She did not realise she was hovering in 1973, but that was when the path was cleared for her leadership. In their incomparably different ways, Clement Attlee and Margaret Thatcher were resolute in their sense of mission. But their exertion of political will was by no means unique. Two of the other turning points were also the product of resolute determination. Roy Jenkins' social reforms in the late 1960s remained in place throughout the subsequent decades. They were followed much later by civil partnerships and the legalisation of gay marriage. These life-changing reforms were introduced in spite of much noisy protestation from opponents at the time, yet any subsequent attempt at revision failed dismally. In contrast, the willful impatience of a newly elected Prime Minister, Liz Truss, and her Chancellor Kwasi Kwarteng to unveil an entirely new set of economic policies within days led to the quickest turning point in modern times. Almost as speedily, the policies and ideas on which they were based were scrapped. Truss and Kwarteng fell too. In the rest of this book,